Hello, namaste, and a very good evening to all our viewers on Citti Media and the Festival of Bharat. I'm your host, Citti. Today, I'm delighted to announce that we are joined by somebody really special, all the way from South Africa. He's been a part of ISKCON South Africa for a long time, and he's worked towards the greater causes of Sanatana Dharma. Please let me introduce you, Savyasaci Das Prabhuji from South Africa. Savyaji, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, Namaste and Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for having me, Sharan. And like to just offer my greetings and pranams to all the viewers of this wonderful channel.
Thank you so much for your kind words, and it's our pleasure to have you here, and I look forward to a great conversation with you. Let me begin, Prabhu, by asking you, what drew you towards Sanatana Dharma in the first place? And what was the first moment when you were introduced to it?
Beautiful question. Just growing up as a young man and becoming more conscious of the world around me, I became aware of the inequalities that humanity undergoes, and specifically around Africa. In my community, I was considering. And so I started to consciously look for communities that had some sort of wisdom about living life that is more equitable, you could say, and fair for all. And it only happened that when I was at the university, after going through Rastafarianism, reading books about from different philosophers, that I saw a poster on campus advertising Bhakti Yoga Society. And so me and my friends got an interest, what is this yoga? I thought it could help us to become enlightened. And as such, we noticed that they had a program at the arts campus of our university. And we actually put aside some classes and went to the arts campus. And there we saw the Hare Krishna monks. At the time, they were just, dressed in saffron, and we were interested in what they had to present. And they told us they were doing the Bhakti Yoga Society. We attended, and the speaker spoke for a few minutes, and he had all my attention, and I began to understand concepts that I had been battling to really understand. And I would say at that moment, my interest in at least hearing more, I wasn't aware that it was Sanatan Dharma at the time, started. So basically at the university, Bhakti Yoga Society, I came across Sanatan Dharma via the Hare Krishna monks that were teaching.
Right. What a beautiful story. So how would you describe Sanatana Dharma in your own view, especially to our brothers and sisters in America, Europe, Africa, or even India for that matter, who fail to understand it?
Yes, Sanatan Dharma. So the Sanskrit gives us the understanding of the meaning. Sanatana meaning eternal, and Dharma sometimes translates in different ways. But in essence, it means the essential quality of a thing. And it can also be understood as regulative guidelines for living life. So Sanatan Dharma then is a discussion of what is the eternal essential nature of living beings. So it's very unifying that we are all living spirit souls. Therefore, we are all Sanatana. And so what is our nature that can never be changed? And in that way, it's really most inclusive for all living beings. What is the essential nature of every living being? Mm-hmm. And its relation to the Supreme Person.
Right. Thank you so much for that beautiful description. If I may proceed to ask you further, earlier you have also spoken about the connections between Ethiopian civilizations and the lineage of Bhagwan Ram. So can you help us understand more ancient pre-colonial possible links between Africa and Sanatana Dharma and even Hindu traditions for that matter?
Yes. What is beautiful with the Vedas is that they are knowledge systems. Veda means knowledge. So the knowledge of the whole universe. And so we all inhabit the same universe, even others on different planetary systems. So we are on this planetary system and we're on this particular planet of Earth, and it has a history. And we hear of the incarnation of the Supreme Lord Sri Ramachandra, who was an ideal king and prince, very famous and in the Ramayana. So Lord Ram came roughly, 1,800,000 years ago. And we hear he had a son, two sons, Love and Kush. And so Kush and the Kushite, Indo-Kush, you find, towards Afghanistan, ancient Egypt, and in, you could say, Ethiopia. These are the places. One of the philosophers who had visited, Africa at the time, he was asked of the people he met there, that he mentioned that there was an Ethiopian civilization and an East Ethiopian civilization, meaning, what is known as India now. And if you look, into Ethiopia and Egypt, these persons, they're also, even the way they look, you can see the seed of today's India and Africa. There's that mixture, you could say. Right. And even we hear of Parashuram. Parashuram was also an avatar powerful warrior who drove 21 generations of Kshatriyas out. He was killing them. So those who fled also fled to what is today known as Africa. So in that way, when you look at the ways of worship, the cultural expressions, you find that there's great similarities across the planet, and especially you can see between India and African cultures.
Thank you so much. There's a very interesting description that you've given to us. W.E.B. Du Bois, at the advent of what we know as Afrofuturism, and this concept has been popularized these days with a lot of movies coming in as well, wrote a story called Dark Princess, I'm sure you know, which was rife with Hindu symbolism, if I may call that, which explores divinity, which explores power, which explores tradition outside of a white colonial lens, if I may call it that way, because narratives were very centered around that for a very long time. What, according to you, are the ways that right now Hindu practices, or even for that matter, indigenous African practices, being used to resist colonial narratives that are being carried out even today?
Yes, you see, looking to the future, you could say, is something that the whole world is sort of engulfed with, even to some futures that don't involve much of the current format of humanity. We are going towards virtual realities and, transhumanisms. And so also, the African imagination and thought, as expressed in such books, is also looking as to what is the expression, say, of Africans in the futures of the world. But we tend to look at these things with caution, as we're given by the Shastra. Sanatan Dharma being a focal point on the soul. And in fact, without considering consciousness and the needs of consciousness, then one is considered to have become a failure in life. So the colonial effort was mainly an effort that was establishing an individualistic culture, which generally exploits the resources and people for profits of certain groups or individuals. And so to resist that is natural, because it's like divorcing us from that communal appreciation of the resources that are given by God to all, and saying that, you know, everyone has a right to the property of the Father. And I would say now, looking into African philosophy, there's what is known as Ubuntu, which is a philosophy that encapsulates that you are because of others. In Zulu, kuthiwa umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. You're a person because of other people. Whereas, you know, the colonial ideology has maybe roots in philosophers like Descartes, who says that I think, therefore I am. Yeah. So in that way, saying others who may not be thinking in these ways of subjugating others and taking over their resources may not be civilized enough, and therefore have to be subverted and used to push on a materialistic agenda. So in Africa, in looking closely at this concept of our common ties, that I become valuable if I am contributing to the well-being of others, is one way of resisting. And of course, people have to find economic solutions to resist, because when you don't have the type of capital needed to create structures that go against the current structures, it's very difficult. It ends up being just ideology and discussion. So I would say, looking at Ubuntu and not looking at the commercialized version that has become, you know, trending now. There's softwares named after it, companies named after it, but looking at it as a core spiritual value that we are meant to all take part in what God has given to all of us. And we are responsible to the well-being of others, not just individuals and corporations.
What you've said right now is very thought-provoking. And if I may ask you a supplementary question on this. Nowadays, we see, again, like we were discussing earlier, we see a lot of conversations that revolve around Afrofuturism, especially after the movie Black Panther released, right? Which incidentally also featured a lot of Hindu symbolism, for the good or worse. I mean, that's again up to debate. But what, according to you, is the space specifically for Hinduism in the future for Africa in general?
First is that we have to really unpack the terminology of Hinduism. Because in the world today, it's like everyone is categorized according to different boxes. And so people are trained to pick a box and then see if I agree or disagree with that type of labeling. And so for Africa, there's definitely a resistance to another box, because they've already been put into different boxes. And then they fail to understand that what is known as Hinduism now is representing an eternal understanding called Sanatan Dharma, which recognizes all, despite of their, you know, land of birth, as spiritual beings, brothers and sisters. And so what is progressive for Africa now is the exposure to the knowledge of the Vedanta, to exposure to knowledge of Sanatan Dharma, and that they can see themselves as also proprietors of this knowledge. See, if God is for all, which he is, then his knowledge is also belonging to all human beings. Just as an African or a Chinese, an Indian can buy a Mercedes-Benz and feel good because they feel it's a good car. Similarly, when it comes to knowledge, it belongs to all human beings. They should be encouraged to understand, look for the deepest, broadest, most comprehensive knowledge about this universe, yourself, and the world. And in that way, not only getting token representation in some Hollywood cooked up fantasy of what they can be, but actually getting knowledge which can transform us to see ourselves in our most glorious expression as spiritual individuals.
Right. And how do you think the teachings of Srimad Bhagavad Gita or the knowledge imparted by Dharma, like you rightly said, help the world be a better place?
Yeah, there's a pandemic of perpetual loss of identity. And the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam addresses that. That if I don't know how to enjoy food, I don't know where food must go. If I try to put it in the ear or the eye or the nose, I will never get the nourishment of that meal. So in a similar way, if I don't know who I am in my core identity, then I can never become happy or satisfied because I don't know how to nourish myself. So such shastras as Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam, they address the identity issue. And especially they give us understanding that I am also connected to a supreme being. As individual souls, we possess all the qualities of the supreme soul, but in smaller quantities. And once I can make the connection between myself and the supreme person, then I have a relationship which is eternal. Then I have an authority in terms of what is this world? Who am I? What are the problems? How can I rise above them? So without having, an authority on what is reality, a common authority, just like in a home, the parents are the authority, especially the father, if it's a complete home. So then the children, if they have some difficulties, they can go to the father or the mother to find out how should we work things out for our family to be happy and peaceful. In a similar way, without recognizing the Sarva Karana Karanam, the cause of all causes, we are unable to see ourselves and the world and its problems in the right perspective, nor are we able to find solutions for the common difficulties. So these are invaluable needs of society, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam.
Very beautifully said. And I have a final question for you. What is your message to young Indians, especially those who are disconnected with Dharma? And we see that a lot these days. So how would you reassess the majesty, the science, and the compassion that Dharma offers to all of us?
I would say that, we know that the British went also to India and had their own colonial project there. And they may have taken some wealth of India, but they forgot the actual wealth, which was the knowledge of Dharma, Sanatan Dharma, the Vedic knowledge. And so it's a very rich body of wisdom, both material, metaphysical, and spiritual. And as Lord Chaitanya has said, that Bharata Bhumite Hoila Manusya Janmayar, Janma Sataka Kari Kara Para Upakar, that anyone who has taken this rare human birth, and especially one who has taken his birth on the land of Bharatvarsha or India, they have the duty to perfect their lives, meaning understand self-realization, be situated, and also then perform work that will benefit everyone. Para Upakar, be the greatest philanthropists. So they should be ambassadors of this great treasure of Sanatan Dharma and make sure that there are proper channels that it is distributed to everyone around the world, because within it are the keys for the prosperity and happiness of all humanity, not even just on planet Earth, universally. So
Right.
it is natural to want to progress materially, and India is booming in that world, especially the tech world and stuff. But try to find out who's the supreme scientist, who's the supreme technician, and you'll find that the Supreme Lord is the supreme in all departments of knowledge, and he is very well documented within the Vedas.
Thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. It's been absolutely enlightening. And I'm sure a lot of Indians will take cue from what you had to say about Sanatana Dharma, especially because we live in such times where we need Dharma more than anything else. Thank you so much again. And my pranams to you. Thank you for all the seva that you're doing.
Thank you very much for having me. And thank you to all that get to hear our conversation. And we wish them the blessings of Shri Krishna. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Namaste. We hope you enjoyed this Citti Media content. Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.